Welcome back to Rollin with Olan. I'm Jeff Olan, your host. Thanks for joining me again. Look, I am having such a great time doing these podcasts, and today I have on a really great friend of mine. We had him on as one of the first guests, Marty Schwartz. He was one of my first guests, and he had so much to say. I mean, he's such a great storyteller. So I wanted to have him back. Marty, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be
Once
back.
again,
Glad to
great
be
to
back.
see you.
Well,
Look, I want to just kind of get into it by saying, first of all, the first show was fabulous. And if my audience hasn't heard, go to Spotify and Apple and check out Marty's first episode. Now, we are going to talk about some other things right now as well. But I do want to remind folks, like, kind of how you got let's talk about your early years just briefly.
well, I was brought up in Brooklyn. I'm wearing the shirt for my dad actually because this is where I was brought up, and that was in a firehouse in Harlem. So, it was the other side of the street, and one of four kids, and you know, not easy times back in Brooklyn in the early '50s. So that was the beginning. I got lucky. I guess we're here to talk about the film industry, so it would be about really how I got started. My background being a tough kid from Brooklyn, which I think helped in my career somewhat. But people say, well, how do I get started? How do I get into it? How do I, join this group of people that really we're so blessed because, we have so many varied experiences with so many different people and walks of life. I mean, you have the Robin Williams of the world and the Ben Stills of the world, complete opposite scales. And we'll
Well,
get
didn't
in.
you start out as a location manager, though?
Well, I started out as a PA in commercials in New York, and then I did that for about 3 years. And I was lucky enough that one of the companies I was working for, we're actually doing three commercials a day sometimes, and I was just a PA. So I'd be in a van driving equipment around from one place to the other as quick as anyone could drive through New York City in a van full of equipment, going from the three different sets. That was after I worked for Howard Zeef, who was the premier director of commercials at the time. The famous commercials, Species Spicy Meatballs and Volkswagen Funeral. You could find them on YouTube. They're amazing. But so that's where it began, and again, as luck would have it, I had a brother-in-law, and he was a first AD on commercials only, and got me a job as a PA. That was my break into the business. So some of us need break-ins to the business. My partner, actually, not partner, but my co PA at the time is a guy named Steve. Steve went on to, well, we're PAs together. He went on to open his own company and had a very hugely successful commercial company. Now lives in Kauai and the Hamptons. So actually, he did pretty well. And but it depends where you want to take it. So I used it as a PA. Came out here and I went, wow, California. I want to be in the film business. My first job, I might have said it on the first interview, but um, one of my first jobs an usher in a movie theater. And
Yeah.
in the middle of winter, I'm putting up the letters on the marquee outside, climbing a ladder, and then cleaning out the theater at the end. And but I also got to hang out in the projection booth all the time, and that's where I fell in love with movies and watching films. It was a great movie. You look it up, called The Projectionist, and it's where the projectionist like talks to all these characters, pictures that are in the projection booth, but he then sees himself in the movie that he's in. It's a movie with Rodney Dangerfield. It's truly the film that said, I've got to learn how to make movies because it was just a classic. So that's kind of what got me going, and so I was like, well, I've got to move to Hollywood, which is what I did, and I came here. I
Can we
didn't
talk
work.
about like what year that was?
That
About
was probably in the early '70s.
early 70s. Okay.
Um, and I worked, for a few years as a PA. Didn't get me for the first, like I said, the first year and a half. I didn't work at all. I was just like collecting unemployment, maybe, or I don't know how I lived. I lived in Hollywood in a tiny apartment and had an old VW Bug, and that was my life. And then I got a job as a location manager, my first job, and it was on a TV series. Um, I think it was called Jigsaw John, um, and then I did a few series as a location manager until I hit it big. Big was a movie called Telephone in probably 1976. And that was with Charles Bronson. The director was Don Siegel. And, we shot all over the place in Montana and everywhere. It was quite the adventure and
So you were
working with.
shooting locations pretty early on.
Yeah, as a location manager, yeah. I mean, and
Hmm.
finding these great locations with Don Siegel. It was a classic director. I ended up doing another film for him 2 years later, which was called Rough Cut with Burt Reynolds, and it was shot all in Hawaii. So I spent like months in Hawaii flying around in a helicopter scouting like the most beautiful locations everywhere. I used to go to the rooftop of the hotel, get in a helicopter, and fly around scouting. I'm like, wow, I'm
Great.
in heaven. Um, but the thing is about, and the other movies I did as location manager, that are pretty classic, was Greece, and I was in charge of everything that was shot at Venice High,
Classic.
and so, and the movie after that, which was huge, was Tom Horn. Now, Tom Horn was interesting in that it's Steve McQueen, who's right there over my shoulder, who gave me that poster. It was from Enemy of the People. But Steve calls me in his office and goes, I want you to take this book. It has a map in the back of it from the 1870s where General Crook chased Tom Horn into Mexico. And I want to film in the exact spots. So you follow this map and photograph everything, film everything. Wasn't still photographs. I made a 8 millimeter, filming of the entire thing. I slated everything where it related to in the book, and I came back and I sat there. I edited it, and I sat there with Steve McQueen for an hour and a half,
Wow.
showing him all the places that Tom Horn was chased into Mexico, and we spent well, they spent about a year in pre-production on Tom Horn. Me, the director was Elliot Silverstein, who's pretty well known for some great movies, and he was the director, and Phil Parsel. Anyway, it was they spent about $1 million in the course of the time that I was scouting and we are putting this movie together. And then they said, mm-mm, this ain't happening. You're not going to Mexico. Everybody's fired, including me. So they in a regroup, they ended up making the movie. Of course, they didn't shoot any of it in Mexico, and the movie was pretty much a disaster. But I went on from Tom Horn to a little movie called Raging Bull, and used
Oh,
to
just a little movie. Yeah.
and used to pick up Martin Scorcese every morning at his house and drive him around and show him the locations we were shooting
Yeah,
at.
you
And
you mentioned on that in our first talk, but that was incredible, right? Picking him up and going to pick because I mean you were not that. I mean you were still fairly new in the industry. You were doing your thing, but you were picking him up. Tell us about that.
it was just amazing to be with such an iconic director and privileged to work on. We of course, as with most projects, you don't know at the time of where it's going to go and how big it's going to be. Obviously, Raging Bull has lasted forever. As a amazing film. Um, and what I want to say about the thing about location managing, and while I was doing that job, and that was my next to last job as a location manager. I only did one more. But the reason is I always felt as a location manager, I want to be on the inside. I don't want to be on the outside of what's happening. As a location manager, you're standing at the door and letting people in, um, which I have to tell that story then. because it just came to mind. But
Go ahead, please.
we're shooting at a house on Raging Bull, and this is a great Robert De Niro story. We're at a house in Mar Vista for Raging Bull. It's the scene by the pool. It's a pretty famous scene, and I'm standing outside the door, and walking in with Scorsese is Robert De Niro. And it just so happens, while I worked for Howard Zeef, as I mentioned, classic commercials, one of them was an American Motors commercial, and Volkswagen. The other, which was pretty famous, but except no one ever really saw it, was a Wishbone salad dressing commercial starring Robert De Niro. And Robert De Niro was sitting, and I might have told this story before, but
Go
uh,
ahead.
Robert De Niro was sitting at a table. It was a whole lock off camera, nothing to it, plain background, and a salad in front of him. And he's pouring wishbone salad dressing on and going, "Wishbone salad dressing makes your salad come alive." And poof, it blows up in front of his face. And so we're about to film, and he comes over to me and he goes, "Marty, can you do me a favor? Can you get me a joint?" And I could say that now because marijuana is somewhat legal everywhere. And I say, "Yeah, I think I can probably make a call and get something." I say, "I don't do anything ever while I'm working, but it's up to you. If that's what you need, I'll get it for you." So I do. I'd get him something, and he comes, and then we do the commercial. Anyway, jumping ahead, I'm doing Raging Bull. He's walking through the door. He looks at me. He takes a few steps, turns around, comes back, and he said, "Where do I know you from?" I said, "The Wishbone salad dressing commercial." And he's like, "All right then." And he's and he smacks me on the back and he goes, "I'll see you later."
I'll see you later. Oh my God. Well, let me just say this. First of all, Marty and I are great friends. I've heard a lot of these stories, and I constantly hear new ones because he has such a prolific career, and he has worked with so many people out there. And we're going to get into some really great stories. So if you did hear the first episode he was on, and you're hearing any of the same stories, he's going to tell it pretty much the same way because he tells them like he's right there right now. So as we continue on, Raging Bull, what an incredible story. Now, was that around the same time as the Cannonball Run?
Right before. So Cannonball Run was around 80, and I was the second AD on Cannonball Run. So that's what I was going to transition to. Is the thing about location managing is I always felt on the outside looking in. And I always, when I've explained movie sets to people and how they work, is about being in the inner circle. And, comparing it to, the nucleus and inside, there's proton electrons that are all feeding the nucleus, and inside is what's going on, what's making the movie. It's the first AD, it's the DP, it's the actors and the director and script supervisor, but it's a small group of people. And I always wanted to be in that group. I didn't want to be on the outside, even though there's great jobs on the outside. There really are. I mean, if you're a key grip, if you're a great gaffer, you're a cameraman, whatever. There's jobs surrounding, the industry that you're still a part of making a film. You're still a part of being with amazing people and in amazing places. And but I always had it in my heart to want to be in the center. I actually wanted to be, I don't want to say in control, but basically, as a first AD, that's what you are, and that's where I wanted to be. And seeing other ADs, not that they were bad, but it was like I saw a way that I think with my personality and easygoing personality that I am most of the time, that I can transform a set into a very conducive place to be creative, and that's what's so important, to that particular job as a first
Right.
AD, as a leader, but also as a leader that's compassionate to what actors are going through, what the crew's going through, having a feeling for what everyone's going through. That's why it was important that I worked my way up from a PA
Mm-hmm.
to a location manager to a second AD to a first AD and then a producer. And it's important to do that because it also gives you an idea of what you want to do in the
What you
industry.
really want to do.
You,
It's paying
you
your
may
dues.
not
Yeah.
want you may not
Mm-hmm.
want to be that leader because it comes along with a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
I got can't tell you how many phone calls from the heads of studio going, well, why are you doing that? Well, why aren't you on this schedule, that schedule? Why'd you schedule that for 2 pages a day instead of four? And you're constantly being bombarded with, you're constantly being questioned, no matter what you do. It's like you almost can't always be right, even if you are. You're going to be criticized. You're going to be looked at with a microscope from those that are above you. But anyway, that's the place I wanted to be. I actually enjoyed that pressure because I knew how to deal with it, and I thrived on it. Actually, it's like, okay, give me more. But
So you made a transition then from location manager, and then you became an assistant director, or that whole transition. Are you going to get into
right.
that now?
Yeah. So what happened was on after Raging Bull, um, I I did a movie with Betty Davis. That's how long ago it was, and there's a great story to go with that. I don't know that I'll get into it, but maybe later if we have time. But there's a great Betty Davis story. But I was the location manager on it. We filmed in Mendocino, California, the whole movie. It was with Betty Davis and Jenna Rollin. It's called Stranger's
Oh
Story of a
my
Mother and
gosh,
Daughter. And a beautiful film. It's where
legends.
Jenna plays, the daughter who has cancer and has a strained relationship with her mother, but um, she comes back because she's dying, and so her and her mother reunite. But that was my transition. So I was lucky enough for a production manager that I had worked with. Um, he said, scout the locations on this, and then we'll try to get you into the guild as a second
Mm.
AD, which is what happened. They hired me as a second at the time because they hadn't had their contract with the guild yet. So I was part of that contract. When they
Mm.
signed their contract with the guild, they said, "Oh, we already hired our second AD," and that's how I got into the Directors Guild as a second. I went on from there to do probably 15 movies of the week or more. I did TJ Hooker, I did Chips, I did
Mm-hmm.
Mike Hammer, a bunch of TV
Crime
series.
story, all
And
kinds of stuff.
well,
Yeah.
Crime Story now was a transition. So on Mike Hammer with Stacy Keach, that was when I was the second AD and the first AD got sick, and I moved up and I did one episode as the first AD on Mike Hammer, and that propelled me. After I did, it was actually near the end of filming that my first job as a first AD. I got the job to go to Miami and do Miami Vice.
Miami Vice. Wow. I want to talk about that in detail because you also want to, and whether we cover it now or not, but you just went to a reunion. What was the reunion? What's the year? How many years ago was that?
It was the 40th anniversary of the airing of Miami Vice.
Yeah, just
So
tell a little bit about that, and then we'll get back to because I don't want to skip that. But you just went to a reunion with Edward James Olmos in Miami, and you went to
right.
the Miami Vice reunion, which was a big to do.
It was a big to do. It was a huge success. There was a proclamation of by the mayor of Miami saying, this is Miami Vice Day, and we were all there. There's actually lots of pictures of it online. There is a Facebook page of Miami Vice fans that
I mean,
were
thousands and thousands of fans came out, right? And
out.
and it,
They
and it was
came
you
from
and Eddie and Don Johnson wasn't there, but he's going to be at the next one, and it was an incredible outing.
maybe at the next one. It's
Right.
still up in the air,
Come on,
um,
Don.
but but the girls were there, Trudy and I mean Olivia and Sandra, and who else? And other guests, Pepe Cerna, Bill Smitrovich. There were several other actors, Bruce McGill. There were several other actors that came, and I actually did a talk. So people paid a certain amount to get like a pass. Actually, I have one. I'll hold it up. Um, um,
Nothing like podcasts.
so right so here, this was the Miami Vice.
Oh, the Miami Vice. Oh, that's beautiful. I just got to say something about that. We're talking about it. That's such a great pass, and very few people who have it. We are talking about 45 years
Yeah,
since you shot Miami Vice. And that
yeah,
was such a classic show. I mean, I watched it. I loved it. I'm sure people have watched it and reruns all over the place. And it's such a classic show. And you guys literally own the streets of Miami, didn't you?
we did. And what's interesting is, uh, different from any other show, is that in any raid or any police activity that was going on besides the stars of the show, they were all real cops, real guns, real cars. We got the cooperation from Miami-Dade police that's unheard of. If I wanted 30 police cars and 50 cops with guns coming out, I had it. And I wanted 7 o'clock in the morning, they would be there and ready to go. I mean, it was amazing. We blocked off the highway, the interstate. We did whatever we wanted, pretty much. And yeah, the
Well,
cooperation.
congratulations on that, Marty, because that says a
Yeah,
lot. So,
but
as we continue, and I just wanted to get that story in, but as we continue on in your illustrious assistant director career, go on from Miami Vice.
well, so Miami Vice. I have to look at my notes. I mean, there's so many. There's so many.
So
Um,
many shows.
so many shows that I lose track myself of really what I did. But after Miami Vice, I went on to another really great, I think one of the best police shows ever on TV was Crime Story, um, and I did the pilot and I did the first season of that, also with Michael Mann. The only reason I left Miami Vice went on for 5 seasons. I did the first 2 seasons and I think 18 episodes. Um, but Michael said, "Oh no, you're leaving Miami." And I'm like, "What? Huh?" And it was in November that we were going to shoot in Chicago. Uh, I hadn't been home in 2 years in California. I was
Wow.
living in Miami. Now all of a sudden I'm going to Chicago, and I have nothing but summer clothes because it's warm in Miami. Now we're going to shoot in the winter, basically on Crime Story. Um, and I had to go buy a whole new wardrobe. But I went from, Crime Story was fantastic with Dennis Farina. There were a lot of people. There was some crossover of people and directors that did both Crime Story and Miami Vice.
Hmm.
Um, and like Bill Smitrovich, Dennis Farina was in an episode of Vice called Lombard, where I actually played his attorney and get I get killed in the episode. I was a stuntman. I was an actor on Vice, and I did the same thing on Crime Story, which doesn't happen a lot these days. It's hard to be the first AD and act and do stunts, but I did get away with it back in the day. And my daughter became a stunt woman, but that's a whole other story. And you've had her on, so you pretty much know her story. But after Vice, what I did was it was Crime Story. After Crime Story, I mean, was um, I started to think, well, I've done movies, I've done all of the best TV. Like I want to start producing, and I was associate producer on Crime Story. So I thought, well, I'm going to start a producing career. And I did. I joined a company and I was head of production and I was supervising producer or producer of several films. The first one was with Sissy Spacek and Beau Bridges. And we shot up in Nova Scotia. And but anyway, I went on to do 10 films for CBS. as head of this production company, a TV production company, and as a producer. He was
Marty,
supervising.
Marty, let me ask you a question. Two things. First of all, if I could just have you speak up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then secondly, how does somebody like an assistant director become a producer? Can you explain that to us, please?
Well, you asked for it. You go in there saying, I have enough experience and I have enough background on a set, more than most people, to do everything. And I, on my own, learned budgeting. Obviously, I knew scheduling inside out. And so when you do that, basically you become a production manager. But, in my case, I didn't want to be a production manager. I did actually in one series called Cupid in Chicago with Jeremy Pibb, and I became the production manager. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to be the overall one. I wanted to hire a good production manager. I wanted to, be the person hiring the best ADs and people. But and also what I found out in producing over 10 films that sometimes it took a really long time to get the film off the ground, but I was still getting the same fee basically.
Hmm.
And so I was like, well, I was doing really good as a first AD, and I was getting residuals, and I was getting my pension, and I was getting health and pension, and so I was like, at a certain point, one movie in particular is called The Staircase with Barbara Hershey and Bill Peterson. We shot in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Beautiful place. There's a lot of stories connected to that, but obviously I can go on forever
Sure.
as well. But it was on that movie that we started pre-production, did the schedule, did the scouting, found that it all takes place in a church, and for the most part, and in 1870s, and got everything put together, and then it was a matter of, well, who's going to be the lead.
Hmm.
And so now I'm thinking, well, we're going to shoot next month. Well, we didn't shoot for another 4 months. Well, by the time we cast Barbara Hershey in the spot, and then she, in her contract, had a deal where she could choose the co-star, who was Bill Peterson. I actually wanted Edward James Olmos because we
Hmm.
had a relationship from Miami Vice that continued on to another feature film I did with him, and I actually AD'd the last feature film that he directed. So we've been friends ever since the
Yes, you have.
41-year anniversary. It was the 40th anniversary, but yeah, it's been almost over 40 years. Um, well, we've been friends. But anyway, my story, the long story short is it took 6 months, but I'm still getting the same fee, and I'm not getting anything, from my pension or from my future health benefits, any of that as a producer. Um, some get enough money, I guess, as a producer that they can afford to pay those things themselves. In my case, I wasn't. So my $70,000 fee at the time, whatever, over the course of what I thought would be 2 or 3 months, ended up being 7 months with post production because you have to see it through to the end. So anyway, that's when I decided to go back to being an AD, and then I said, okay, I'm just going to be doing big features as an AD, and that's pretty much what I did. So I went, you know, movies of the week and
Yeah, well,
started.
you've done a lot of big movies. I mean, shall we say? I mean, Marty is legendary with being a first AD. Has done so many different movies, and we've worked together on a lot. It's something people do become friends on sets. And I know you've made a lot of friends over the years, and we all make friends. Marty and I became friends many, many years ago, and we started working together first and foremost, and then one thing led to another, and now we're really best of friends. We ride bikes together, we go out and do things together, And Marty, you've been on a lot of different movies. We've worked together, like you said. We did Just Married with Ashton Kutcher and the late Brittany Murphy, and we've done Cheaper by the Dozen and Taxi with Queen Latifah and Jimmy Fallon and License to Wed with Robin Williams and so many others. You've got some good stories to tell on some of the movies that you've been on, and so I'd love to get your take on some of those. Marty, as we've said, is like really just how many movies and TV shows do you think that you've done over the years? What's on your IMDb? I don't even know.
Well, as a first AD, I have 50 films as a
50
first,
feature films.
50 feature films as a first AD. Um, as a well,
It's a
with
huge number.
episodic TV and movies of the week is probably another 20 or so, 30, I don't know, movies of the week. I haven't really counted. And it's probably, I don't know, upwards
20
of
TV series, and
probably
we have to
75
remember.
episodes of television.
Yeah, we have to remember TV shows go for years.
Yeah,
Movies could be in between prep and shooting could also go for years.
yeah.
So yeah, you've done quite a bit, my friend.
Yeah, yeah. I was just actually looking at, well, it was Jackie Chan's birthday, so it made me revisit the Karate Kid in China that I shot with him, and which was an amazing thing. I just sent him birthday wishes because he had sent me an autographed copy of his biography. I thought all I could do is I have to wish him a happy birthday, but it also brought back all the memories. And again, well, we did things on that show because of Jackie and because of Will Smith that people can't do. No one shot. We filmed in the Forbidden City, and no one's filmed in there since The Last Emperor was shot there back in the 80s. No one's been inside allowed to be filming in the Forbidden City
Well,
since then. But we were. We had some power behind us with Jackie and Will. And I will say there's a lot of controversy with Will, but he was a complete gentleman on that show. He was on the set every day with Jada and a positive influence really the whole time. So there was
yeah, you had
nothing.
a good relationship with him, and also with Jackie Chan. You became really very close to Jackie. He gave you some advice. I remember you telling me. I don't know if you.
Yeah.
I forget what it was, but anyways, we'll move on.
What was funny with Jackie was I did do Cannonball Run as a second AD, and Jackie was in Cannonball Run. And so when I first got to China and started rehearsing with him, I said, Jackie, do you remember me? And he goes, from where? I go, from Cannonball Run. I was the second AD. He goes, no, you aged too much. Okay. That was him way. Now, I don't know if he was saying, well, I aged in a good way. But, but it actually it was good advice because it actually drove me on to go like we were filming in some of the most logistically impossible places ever where you have to walk 2,000 steps to the top of a mountain
Well,
there with the equipment with everything and sometimes 300, 400 crew members carrying stuff like Sherpas going up Mount Everest. That's how we shot in some places. It was logistically. If you ever watch the movie, anyone, it's a tour guide of China. It's really some amazing places you'll never see. We're filming on the Great Wall with a helicopter shot. I mean, this is it was unheard of. You can't get away with it in China, especially after the tariffs. They're not even allowing American-made films in China as of
right,
yesterday.
not right
So
now, right?
things have really changed, but again, all of this comes around to where the places you can go and the people that you meet, the personalities, the locations. It just opens up a world. So no matter what you're doing, whether it's you're me being in charge of the set, or you're just part of it in any way, you be doing makeup, hair, you be an extra, whatever it is. Okay, you're part of something that's, first of all, it's going to be playing forever. Okay, so you're immortalized on a DVD or on the cloud. So you're forever there. Um, when you become part of it, and and it's also such an exciting industry. I know it's hard for a lot of people now, but it's rewarding in the end. And my advice is for anyone out there going through a tough time about it is you have to hang in there. You have to just keep fighting, and in terms of the future, you have to you know we don't know where the industry is going to go. So I think in some way, whatever it is, you have a backup plan.
Yeah, have a backup plan. Keep
Have
fighting the good fight. We always work with, good people. Most of the people are good in the industry, and we all have stories of others. You also did a movie called Night at the Museum. Again, you're working with Robin Williams, and you worked with Ben Stiller. I'd like to just kind of open up the can of worms with Ben Stiller, Marty. You've told me the story a few times. I think the audience would enjoy it. So please tell us your relationship with Mr. Stiller.
Well, I'd have to start out first. Robin Williams was in that movie, and Robin and I had done two films before that, and we had spent a lot of time together. One of them was um, what was it called? License to Wed.
License to Wed, right?
And we filmed that down in Jamaica. And Robin and I got very close because every night he didn't want to sit with the producers and directors, and I actually had my family down there, and he'd sit with us. So it was like every evening we would be having dinner together, and we were down in Jamaica for 2 weeks. So we spent a lot of time together. And then I ran into him when I was doing a film in Vancouver, and it was like, oh my gosh, we weren't even working together, but we were in the same hotel, and there we are together. And so we really had a close knit relationship. But and I'm getting to Ben because what bothered me most about Ben was how he treated other people. And as someone who, like I said before, wants to make the set a really conducive place to create, he was doing the opposite. And he was also disrespecting fellow actors, crew, Mm, well, the crew in general is disrespecting when you make people wait. When you're like called to the set and it's time to go to work and you're waiting for him for a half hour, it's not a good thing, you know. And but that was bothering me a bit, and doing whatever I could to like try to correct it, but it was almost impossible. But so in the first week of filming, we were in New York City. Now this is $130 million movie.
Hmm.
We had nothing but money. We're shooting is the first week of shooting in New York City down in Lower Manhattan. There were 1,000 people gathered around because they knew there was a movie going on, and the word got out. Ben Stiller's in it, and people wanted to see Ben. Robin was not in that scene. But it was the simplest scene that an assistant director could ever do. It was Ben Stiller walking out of a building, um, going to his car and finding it booted. There's a big boot on it, and he kicks the tire and says, curses or says something. That was the scene. It's as easy as it gets. A couple extras walking by in the background.
So,
It's like giant scenes I've done with, Megaforce. I had, 40 tanks and 40 Megaforce vehicles and 100 bombs going off. That's the complete opposite of a simple scene and a complicated scene where all he's doing is walking out and going to his car. So there's 1,000 people around. I have 30 PAs. I have 20 cops, police line all around. Everything's cordoned off. And someone ducks under the police line, runs by, takes a picture of Ben, and runs away. And Ben comes over and he goes, come here. Did you see that? I said, the guy that crossed under the police line and took your photo? Yes. I go, Ben, there's There's 1,000 people taking our picture right now. Everyone has a cell phone. Everyone's taking a picture of us right at this moment. Like, what's the problem? He said, here's the problem. He goes, do you, he said, well, he's going to think about this. Um, he said, do you have any control over the set? Do you even know what you're doing?
Hmm.
Like,
Wow.
let me think about that. Do I have
Yeah.
control? I said, Ben, let me answer the second question first. Um, do I know what I'm doing? This is about my 30th film or so. I don't know. I'd lost count. Um, I said, it's about my 30th film. I'm starting to get the idea. I said, in terms of control over the set, I have total control. I go, however, there could be a guy on that roof with a gun aiming a bullet at your head right now, and I have no control over that.
Wow.
And I start to walk away, and then I turn around and come back. I say, or maybe I do.
Wow.
Now, this was my way of trying to get him on board. Of like,
Hmm.
first of all, you're not going to attack me. You don't intimidate me. Nobody actually has yet on a set, especially an actor or anyone else. But um, it was my way to say, look, like, get real, like,
Hmm.
we're all in this together. We're all doing this for the same reason. Anyway, I'll get to that, how I got to say that to him afterwards, because the movie went on. Again, it's a 70, 80-day shoot, and we're now up in Vancouver filming, and he's still, even all through those 70 days, whatever, he's always taking shots at me and trying to break me. Well, he can't, and it's getting him crazy that he can't. So with 2 weeks left in the movie, he decides to replace me. So the head of production comes to me from Fox and says, "Hey, will you do second unit for the rest of the movie? Because the guy we're paying $20 million to doesn't want you on the set." So, I said, "Well, is he the producer?" No, 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 no. He's the actor. I said, "Well, guess what? An actor can't fire an assistant director on a movie. It's actually
Yeah.
against the rules. Doesn't happen." Um, But anyway, I said, no, I'm not doing second unit. I'll be leaving. And I did leave. And so the next day, I fly out. There's a huge party for me that night, by the way, with every single crew member there is there. Um, and Guillermo Navarro, who won the Academy Award for DP, he was the DP on the movie, won the Academy Award the next year for Pan's Labyrinth. He threw this party for me with every single crew member there. Except Ben. But so the next day I fly out and I have an interview for another movie, and it's with Robin Williams and it's with Ben Stiller's wife. And so we're in rehearsals, and Christine Taylor is his wife, and everybody's getting along fine. Everyone knew that, there was some friction, let's call it, between me and Ben. The producer was Bob Simons, who came to me and said, "Look, Marty, I know there's some bad blood between you and Ben, but do me a favor. If he comes to the set, and he probably will, don't hit him." And it's not like I've been known to hit anybody on the set. I never have, but I am known to be physical, and I'll get into that too, because that's part of being a first AD. You have to be in shape, and you have to be mentally in shape, and you have to be physically in shape, because it just takes so much out of you if you're not. And then you get weak, and then you're mentally weak anyway. So anyway, we're doing a big dress up scene in this movie, License to Wed, and uh, my second comes to me and said, Ben's agent's on the phone and wants to know if tomorrow's a good day for him to come visit. I said, you tell Ben's agent that Marty Schwartz is the first AD and he doesn't think it's a good idea.
Wow.
So, nah, she comes back to me 5 minutes later. She goes, they're on the phone now. They want to talk to you. I said, give them my number. I'm busy right now. 10 minutes later, the phone rings. Hi, this is so and so from UTA, which is who he was with at the time. And is there a problem with Ben coming to the set tomorrow? I go, oh, no, no problem. He said, is it a closed set? I go, no, it's not a closed set. For the most part, I said, but Ben needs to know who's running the set, and it's Marty Schwartz, and he doesn't think it's a good idea. Goodbye. And I hang up on him. Well, the next day, Ben comes to the set, and I'm running the set. There's 100 extras. They're all dressed to the nines. It's a big, expensive engagement party scene. And anyway, out of the corner of my eye, I see Ben going back and forth. He's pacing, and he stops, and he's staring at me. He's like, and I turn around and I go, "What the f you looking at?" I
Nice.
mouth it, and he walks away. Okay, I go about my business. All right, we're filming over here now. We're doing this, and then I go like that. Like, there he is, staring at me. Again, I go, "What you looking at?" And scatters away again. It happens a third time. Now I'm getting a little aggravated. I have a job to do. I have 100 extras. I have Robin Williams. I have a whole scene to do here, and it's starting to annoy me. And so turn around the third time. There he is, staring, and I yell it out. What the you looking at? And he scatters away again. Okay, we break for lunch, come back. My second had a name for him called Angry Inch. We'd worked with him before. Angry Inch is in the tent. I'm like, look, I'm over it. I'm ignoring it. I'm just going to do what I do. I don't care, you know. So we come back from lunch. We start shooting. Now he's pacing again, back and forth pacing. He's going around to crew members trying to say, "Hey, I think I worked with you. Don't I know you from some?"
Yeah.
I can hear what's going on. And anyway, we were in the middle of we're doing a complete turnaround. So new lighting set up, and there's some time. He comes over to me and he's like, "I'm really sorry I didn't get to see you before you left Vancouver." And I go, that really doesn't mean a fucking thing to me. And he goes, well, I was just trying to do the right thing. I go, really? The right thing in your little mind as an actor in a movie is to fire the first AD? I don't think so. I said, he said, I said to him, look around you. Do you see everybody here? And meanwhile, everything on the set has stopped. And all the crew members know there's a little friction between him and I. They also know I have a pretty heavy hand. But anyway, I say, you see everyone around you? They're all doing the right thing. He said, I was just trying to do the right thing. I said, look around you. Everybody here is doing the right thing. That's working together to make the best possible film that we can. I
That's
said,
right.
that's what the right thing is. And then I do it like that. Like he thinks it's common. But I'm not going to hit anybody on a set. But he thought it was happening. And then I said, can we talk about it? No, we can't. He said, I'm busy doing the right thing. And his head just drops, and I walk away. And he's stunned there literally for 5 minutes. He can't move because no one's ever talked to him this way. And people that came up to me that had worked with him, over time and said, no one's ever talked to him that way. He was stunned. He went over to Christine, his wife, and said, that SOB assistant director doesn't want me coming to the set anymore. And so she starts crying, and I go, and he leaves. And I go to her and I say, Christine, listen, your husband had something to say to me. I had something to say to him. As far as I'm concerned, it's all over. We're done. Let's move on. Let's make a movie and have a good time doing it because that's what we do. And that's it's kind of how it ended.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, let's
didn't
let
actually.
go
There's
ahead.
another part to the ending. We're in Jamaica now, and it's the second to last day of filming, and Ben shows up on
Um,
the set,
Marty, are you
and
there?
he's going around talking to the actors that he knew or whatever,
Oh,
and I just
okay.
walked up to him and I slapped him on the back and I said, "Hey Ben, it's so good to see you." Oh, there's one more final moment to the story. I'm in Hawaii with my friend who I said was a PA with me, and a friend of his come over and said, "Hey," and I was telling him this story about Ben, and he goes, Ben has a house just down the road." And I said, "Really? Let's take a ride over there." And we get in the car, we drive over, I press the ring doorbell and say, "Hey Ben, it's Marty. You want to come out and play?"
That's
Anyway,
funny. I
that's
love
the
that.
Ben story. But yeah, from there, it's a lesson about, how do you deal with people on the set that are that way. There's been mostly, I'd say 98% of the people I work with have been fantastic and have not had a problem. There are people that cause problems.
Thank you for telling that story because, look, not a lot of people can tell stories like that. Not a lot of people have the history that you do in this great business that we are in. And, it's really something that we work with a lot of great people. And I'll tell everyone, Marty is a class act. I mean, I've been on many sets with you, my friend, and you are a class act. Everybody loves you, the cast, the crew, everybody. So what happened with Ben Stiller just doesn't happen, and it's unfortunate when one person becomes the bad egg. But Marty made sure and make sure that we move on and everything was able to go. And I was on that set when that happened, and I remember we were in the
Um,
backyard of that house
right,
and I
right.
remember quite vividly. So, thank you for sharing that. We don't have much more time. That's how fast these podcasts are, Marty. But
Right.
I love the stories that you tell. Do you have any other stories that you want to share about anybody you've worked with or anything else? That you want to share?
Well, I had great moments uh, with, with a lot of people. I mean, it goes to for
Helen
the
Mirren, the Helen Mirren story. Dame Helen Mirren. Do you want to
right.
tell that one at all? I know
Well,
you told it last time, but if you could maybe share it again. There's a lot of people that possibly never even listened to that first episode we did. So
hmm,
can you tell them your relationship with what happened with Helen Mirren and um, what was the movie that you were in with her and
Donald.
Donald Sutherland?
Yeah, that was the Leisure Seeker. It was, it's kind of a bittersweet, somewhat sad movie. But anyone that has, relatives or had to deal with dementia or cancer. It's that kind of a movie. There's some uplifting moments, but it's sometimes a little tough to take as well. But it's just one of those films that gives you an example of what people have to live with sometimes, and with their relatives and things like that. And that's what it's about. It's their relationship with their children and go on this on their final journey, or what will be their final journey. Um, but I mean, they were just wonderful to work with the whole time. I mean, the story was with partly with Donald, who's just a great character and intense, but in a good way. There's not he's not mean. He's just very professional, like a Steve Martin, who I did 3 movies with.
Hmm.
Um, and these are people that that are extremely professional and really wonderful to work with. And but he, I was a producer on The Leisure Seeker. I also acted in it and with them, and
You were on scene with them, right?
I was in a scene with them and had most of the dialogue. And but Donald came to me because I was a producer, and he's like, how are we doing these driving shots in a motorhome? And there's a great motorhome movie that I had, of course, had to watch, was with Robin Williams, was RV, and it's like a lot of that was CG, or fake backgrounds, and Robin, I'm sure, drove sometimes, but Donald comes to me and he's like, I need to drive. I can't act unless I'm driving. I say, I'm not doing this on a stage with backgrounds going by, green screen. This is going to be me driving. I go, well, Donald, you're getting on a little bit. But I didn't say that. But I said, how do you know that you would drive a motorhome? We're going to have cameras in there and crew people and things. And this is a 1970s Winnebago. I go, you have to pump the brakes. I go, I drove it. I know. And having a bit of a stunt career,
Yeah.
I know about these things. And I said, he goes, listen, I drove a Ferrari cross country twice. I can drive. I'm like, all right. Well, guess what? You and I are going to go out and take a drive. I want to see how you drive that motorhome. And we got in together, just me and him, and he just floored it and took off out of the driveway and just, he is barreling around. I'm like, all right, let's go in that driveway, do a 180. Oh, geez, like, okay, you got me convinced. All right, I then have to go to the other executive producers. They were actually all from Italy for the most part. It was Italian director, Italian DP. It was all the Italian crew. And, which will lead me to the Helen Mirren story. But um, uh, he drove like crazy. Then the stunt coordinator came to me, and really good guy and professional, and he's like, I can't allow this. He was, he's 82 years old or whatever he was. He said, I can't do this, and I'm like, well, I'm the producer. I've gone through the other producers. I've gone through insurance. He's driving. My
He's
choice,
driving.
not yours. The burden's off your shoulders. It's on me. I said, if anything's going to go wrong, I'm going to be the one to suffer. And I knew that, but I
Yeah.
also had the faith in him, to do it. And he did an amazing job. And we'd have 3 cameras sometimes mounted in that motorhome and drive for 30 miles and film the dialogue.
It's
And
incredible. It's incredible. Marty, look, I don't want to go too long here
yeah,
because you know, love to have you back again. We have so many great stories to tell, and you know, you can only tell these kind of stories, folks, if you're really living this type of life. And Marty's been blessed to live this type of life. He's been in the industry for a long time. You know, just one question for you, and then we're going to really wrap it up here for today. Looking back at your full and illustrious career, Marty, what's your thoughts on your Hollywood history?
on my history,
Yeah, like everything you've done, because you've worked with so many
well,
superstars. You've traveled around the world, around the globe. You've worked in places that we can't work in anymore, or places that, I mean, it's just incredible what you've done. Yeah. How would you wrap up in kind of a nutshell, your career?
well,
I
I
mean, you're
mean,
not done.
I'm not done. I'm still, doing like supervising producer and consulting producing. I look at schedules and scripts and budgets and tell people this is right or it's wrong or how to make it better and do consultations. But so just because the business was so good to me, I want to give it back. I want to give it back to people and uh, to everyone. Look, I had a great career. I look back on it now. Look back, I have dreams about it all the time. It's great. I have dreams now at night, and I'm on a movie set again. I'm with a director that I worked with, 30 years ago. Or I can't find my script, and I'm looking all over. I'm in the middle of a production meeting, and God knows I've conducted, let's say, at least
Yeah.
150 production meetings, which is unheard of, and I hated every one of them until
But
they
you
were
ran them
over.
well. The ones
Like,
I was at, you ran really well.
yeah, I run them well, and they're they're concise and they're to the point, and I have all my notes in front of me and everything. It's all either in my head or it's written down, and so you have to hit on every detail, and it's just so important in that job. But yeah, in a nutshell, what can I say? Looking back, it was a great ride,
It's
and
a heck of a
it's
career, my friend. Yeah.
yeah.
Now, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, I'm on Facebook, so anyone that wants to that has a question from anything I've said, or look up my credits on IMDb and
IMDb.
IMDb,
Yeah, I
and
am.
and have has any question, so message me on Facebook, and
Facebook.
I'll try to answer you. And
Yeah, and he probably will because he is. You're on social media.
yeah,
Quite a
here
bit.
and
A
there.
lot of people know Marty. I mean, tons of people know Marty in the industry. But anyways, look, I want to thank you so much for being on the show again. You're really a great asset to the show. Your stories are tremendous. I mean, when I'm with you, you tell a lot to me. And every day I'm fascinated to listen to you as everybody is. And please, everybody, go to check out the original episode that we did, the first episode we did with Marty, and check out all the episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcast, and also on YouTube. And actually, hear Marty's daughter, Courtney Schwartz. We did an episode with her, the stunt woman and stunt coordinator. Marty, thank you so
Well,
much again.
also, I'll point out, besides my daughter, I do have a son
Yes,
who's equally as acclaimed. He's in his 12th year, I think, now as a principal dancer at Metropolitan Opera. And so he's going to be starting, I think, next month in 5 different operas. Um,
all in New
Magic,
York.
Magic Flute is a great one where he does some individual standout performances, and yeah, and a bunch of others in New York City. If you happen to be in New York City, go to Metropolitan Opera, and you can see my son dance because he's quite the dancer.
Great. He
Uh,
is quite the dancer. A very talented family. I'll say one other thing. Marty's wife, Marty, and your wife. You met Nicole on the set.
yeah, yeah.
What was she doing at the time?
Oh, she actually had a show called The 20 Minute Workout before I met her. Um, and at the time, she was an actress on TJ Hooker. There was an episode called Exercise and Murder, but because of her aerobics show that she had and owned, it was called The 20 Minute Workout. You can find it on YouTube, and you'll see Nicole Schwartz, my wife. And yeah, we met on that set. We didn't see each other for 3 years while I did Vice and Crime Story, and then when I came back, we reunited, and that's when we took off to Hawaii. Made sure, okay, this is what we're gonna do, is get get married and have kids. So
And that's showbiz, folks. That's showbiz. Marty, thank you so much. Thank you all again for listening and watching. Being in this industry is incredible. You could meet a lot of people. You can meet your wife and a lot of other things. So thank you again, Marty. Love you. Thank you, audience. See you on the next one. Rolling with Olan.
all right, see you. Thank you.